Hello once again, everyone. Now, before we finish off the spear section, it bears some talking about the sword versus spear. Now, one important thing that you want to check first is, and which in fact we made double sure to check this before the thing began, was it should be noted that Fiore doesn't actually say sword versus spear. He says sword versus some attacks, some of which could be like a spear, i.e. the thrown spear coming in, throwing a sword like a spear, and then he just kind of mentions it, throw your sword or spear as it comes in. But then he also does show us clearly the staff and dagger being used against someone, clearly, in fact, two people using a spear. So this is all to be thought of less as like, here are the words from Fiore, and much more of, here's Fiore's methodology applied to this situation, in which case it does still work out very, very well. So the advice we are given is that any guard will actually work as long as it's not tipped down the middle. So this could be any of my wide right-hand guards, or any of my wide left-hand guards. And it should be noted for this, I'm in armor, Jake is not. Reason being is this is the situation, honestly, I find this comes up a lot more in. I have lost my primary weapon, Jake has an advantageous weapon, so he's going for me, and I am relying on my sidearm. Now for the thrusts that we're going to go off of, we're going to use two. We're going to use the mook thrust, but we're also going to use the other thrust that we are shown from the attacker against the staff versus the dagger, which is actually lower, so it's on the low line. One is standing right forward with his right hand on the spear thrusting like this, and then the other is in the classical mook thrust that we were talking about in the spear version. So, which yeah, he's already having some bolognese fun. But, the guards that we are told to use from Fiore in dealing with this is going to be three, and they're all from our left side. We have Dente del Cingaro, Finestra Sinistra, and Posta di Donna Sinistra. Reason being is because these are going to be strongest. They'll also beat aside things that are being thrown against us or what have you. So these are very good, advantageous ones to do. And especially if you're finding yourself fighting in armor, these are going to be pretty nice. I mean, the only one that crosses up my hands is Posta di Donna, but I'm not exactly vulnerable here, even though I'm not holding it up as high as I normally would. So it's still a pretty damn good guard. Now, in the case of what's going to happen is, as this thrust is going to come in, I'm going to step out hard with my left leg as I do my percussive beat. I want to get past the point. Then I'm going to start my blow coming down my fendenti with my right leg down into the nape of his neck. Now the reason I like to do it with these two steps rather than just doing one, I'll get to when we start talking about what Jake may do. So here is that again. He comes into the thrust. I deflect. I cut down. Very simple, very easy to use. Our next instance will be using, we'll go out of Posta di Donna. For this one, I'm going to need to use a bit harder of a left step because as he's thrusting in, I need to get that hard percussive sort of overbind. So it's really like I'm breaking the point because I am. From here, I'm going to not cut up because if he's wearing gauntlets or things along those lines, that covers it. I'm going to take that second to lift it up, then step into it with my right leg. Again, I'll explain why in a moment. Now, it should also be noted, with these, we're recommended to do a smaller crescere first. I am doing it, I forgot to draw attention to it. What does it do for you, especially when you're doing it out of this one? What it does is Jake is about to thrust. If I start already moving, he is now going to start tracking me. Meaning that he's not thrusting dead on as he wanted to be, he's now thrusting slightly over himself. The same is true if he's in the other position as well, because now he's actually going to his weak side as we go, right? So, that small little crescere gets me moving, also gets me charged up for my left step, which really took him out of position here, so I may hit him as I deem fit. So one more time with Posta di Donna, and then we'll get into Finestra. Break it, cut it. Now, we get to Finestra. No lie, this one's the harder to do, but also I think the most advantageous. Let's switch sides to this one so they can see the blade action clearly. So for this one, I don't necessarily care about the volta a whole lot. And mind you, this is me talking about armor applications. I don't care about the volta very much because I'm not going to stand here. It's going to be, oh crap, I just lost my main arm. Oh crap, here comes the spear. Let's move into a position that I can do something from. But I am still going to use that crescere as we talked about. So the goal here is as he comes in, I'm almost going to, and my sword flexed there, but I still actually got out of the way. I'm going to be overbinding on him like we're exchanging points, but more about breaking. So I'm not necessarily cutting out of this, so you can. Instead, it's more about the idea of making that wedge, and that time I got my sword where I want it to be. This gives me a very, very strong overbind, which again gives me the exact same follow-up as I had before. Should be noted, you can also turn your hand and cut out of it, basically moving into Poseidona. But you could have also just gone to Poseidona, so what's the point? Here's that again. I'm here. I use that kind of thrust to overbind, and then I cut it. Now, it should be noted that Fiore does say in his, kind of the start of the sword versus spear section, but again, 3 moves with swords and one that's going to throw it like a spear. You can also use the wide guards from the right, and then if you go out of the right, you'll have the option to cut or thrust, but from the left, you can only cut. Now, the reason that I am going from the left as my preference, my personal, in armor versus unarmored, is because I want to make sure that Jake only has one option. If I come from the right-sided guard, yes, I get a lot of good options, but he's usually going to squirrel away and keep distance from me, rather than do what I want him to do. So let's showcase what I want him to do first, and we'll go from there. So, by coming from my left against his right, for this I'll use Dente, what I'm essentially doing is I get kind of past his spear. The only thing that Jake can defend himself with when I bring this cut down is the middle of his hack, which he's going to be inclined to do. This is good for me. I'm right foot forward. I have done a strong cut. He doesn't get the chance to counterattack or anything along those lines. He has to just prevent himself from getting cut. This means that since I can make him reliably do that parry, my next action can be my left leg and left arm entering me into the close range game, from which I can do whatever I want to do. Jake, on the other hand, if he wants to go body to body with me off of that cut, he can, but he's now walking a lot further to get me. If he tries to grab on me like this is a spear and just goes for me, I have the ability of doing a tornado back with my right leg, keeping my sword well out of his reach, and look, we've been here before, it's the blade grab. So I find that this reliable position is very good for almost forcing the spearman to parry the way you want him to parry. So now we'll showcase that as just fluid. Without you coming to grab me, I'll just go ahead and cut you, and some options therein. So parry, cut, and now my options could be I can grab up and thrust, I could pull down and thrust, or I can grab behind with my thumb toward his tip, push it off to the side and thrust or cut. These are all great options that you can do reliably and easily from this bind that you can create without fail. Now, we'll do one fluid, I suppose. Nice and solid. Now, to showcase why we're doing it that way and not the other way, this time I'll do a guard from the right. I'm going to go ahead and go out of Poseidona. He will thrust in and I'm going to parry. Here, to do a cut, I can absolutely do a cut. It'll probably be from here. That's fine, but it is a narrower target. Getting this over his sword arm is going to be a little trickier. Alternatively, I could try and cut a Fendenti again, but that takes a little bit longer. Alternatively, I can do the thrust, which is probably the best option here. Now, Jake's response in this instance is not going to be to try and parry me, unless he's wearing forearm. He's probably going to retreat out with his open back leg and get his spear point back on his range. Now I'm back where we started. Now, it should be noted, if Jake was standing the other way around, so he was standing with his right hand out on the spear, that flips, right? Now it might be more advantageous for me to come from the right side, because now I get to that place I want to get to do all of my closing actions. But in general, I find most people that you'll encounter in this situation are left foot forward anyway. If they are right foot forward, you can make your choice day up. But really the most important thing is, unless you can reliably cut him, just parry and maybe get away, or alternatively parry and see if he still wants to try it. But either way, I'll showcase those one more time real quick, and then we will be done. Dente, good follow-up. Poseidona, with no follow-up. Finestra, with me being able to pursue thanks to my armor. Because as long as I do that cut, I'm coming forward with a reliable foot, which means it was no problem at all for me to move into the close range game, even though he kept his distance. And that's the important thing, is what Fiore tells us. If I'm going to put my right foot forward, it's to put my left foot forward as a follow-up. If I'm not, then it's to bring my right foot out as my follow-up. As long as I'm nice and comfortable with that, I'm never really at a loss for what footwork to do. But either way, that is basically to really title this, the Fiore's methodology applied to sword versus spear. Armor is a slight consideration, but not really. I could do everything I just did out of armor. So, thank you very much, Jake. And thank you all very much for watching. We'll go over some other techniques another time.